All right, so this objective is 21.28. Objective 21.28. This becomes a 0 today, so we want to make sure we know what we're doing here. It's actually going to be very similar to what we were doing yesterday. Really similar. Okay. So, writing down the original problem, putting down factor for each one of them, let's go through it. The very first thing that we do when we have these situations where we're told to factor is check to see if there is a GCF, if there's something I can divide every single one of the terms by. When I look at that first term, or when I look at that first polynomial, the 6x squared, the 5x, and the 1 looks to me like the biggest I can divide by is 1. Okay. The next expression, you're going to see something different, but this one, the biggest, 1. So there isn't a point to taking a GCF out. The next thing that we do is, well, if it's 3 terms here, we're going to go to our box, much like we've done for a lot of these problems. And we're going to follow the same procedure as we did yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, you didn't watch the video, or you were just kind of zoning out, make sure to watch it, okay, because it's really important. What we do is we take that first term, we put it in the top left-hand corner, 6x squared. Then we take the last term, 1, and we put that bottom right-hand corner. Then we try to come up with two numbers that will multiply to give me something, and then 2 numbers that will add to give me something. And those somethings are, well, regarding the multiplication, what I have to do is multiply this 6x squared and the 1, right? These 2 I multiply. Now I know 6x squared is just, or 6x squared times 1 is just 6x squared, but gotta write that down. And then we take the middle one, and that's what we're trying to add to. So we're trying to come up with 2 terms that will multiply to 6x squared that will add to 5x. Ross, what do you got? Okay, 2x and 3x, right? So I want to make sure we don't forget the x's. We have 2x and 3x. 2x, oops, supposed to doesn't really matter which direction I put this down, but 2x and 3x. Right, because if I multiply them, I get 6x squared, and if I add them, then I get 5x. I'll put the 3x up top here, just as a choice. It didn't really matter if I put the 2x there. And I'll put the 2x right here. Remember that the first step to doing these problems, not the first step, once you have those 2 terms, you do is you take the greatest common factor of the first row. When you were doing 21.1, or if you've done it, a lot of times we just had an x and an x, right? Top left-hand corner, we just put an x and an x, because x times x is 6x squared. But that's not the case here. What is the biggest amount I can divide the first row by? 3 and an x. Don't forget the x, right? So 3x. Okay, now I can fill out the rest of this. 3x times what would give me 6x squared? 2x would. 3x times what would give me 3x? 1. 2x times what would give me 2x? 1. Everything is positive when I look at the outside of this box, so then I just put it down as 3x plus 1 in parentheses times 2x plus 1 inside of parentheses. There's a lot of steps here. That's why it's good to go through plenty of examples so you feel more and more confident about this. The next one's a little harder. It's got some pretty big numbers. When you do these problems, you're going to want to check to see if you have a number that's negative in front of the x squared. If you do, then divide by at least a negative 1. Okay? You'll see that happen. You're going to divide by at least a negative 1 and put it on the outside. However, when I look at this next expression, I can divide by more than negative 1. what is the greatest common factor that can be taken out of all three of these terms? We always want to check. -3, okay? And we're going to want to take out the negative because of the negative in front of the x squared, okay? Only because of that. So I'm going to divide everything by -3. So that's going to be divided by -3, that's going to be divided by -3, that's going to be divided by -3. And I'm going to put that on the outside of some parentheses. And I'm going to divide each of those by -3. It's kind of like the opposite of the distributive property, factoring by GCF. What is -15x squared divided by -3? It's going to be a positive 5x squared, right? Then divide 21x by -3. Okay, careful, it's got to be -7x. And then 18 divided by -3, -6. Okay, so my final answer is going to actually have that -3 be a part of it. It's going to be on the outside of two sets of parentheses. But I'm not done factoring yet. I got to see if this right here is factorable. To check to see, we go to our box. Top left-hand corner, I'm not going to put the -15x squared. I'm going to put the, now I'm focusing on this green polynomial. I'm going to put the 5x squared. So put down 5x squared here, and then the last term in this case, -6. Again, I want two numbers or two terms that will multiply to something and that will add to something. What I want it to multiply by is the multiplication of 5x squared and -6. We know is -30x squared. And then what I want it to add to is the middle one. In this case, -7x. Anybody know two terms that will multiply to -30x squared that will add to -7x? Yes? -10 and +3. Notice that she made it a specific decision to say -10, not -3. Okay, the other direction wouldn't work. If I had -3 and +10, then I wouldn't get as positive, or I wouldn't get a -7x. Okay, so it's got to be a -10x and a +3x. Okay, so now up to us to decide where we want to put things. I'll decide to put the -10x here and the +3x there. It didn't matter where I put it. What is the greatest common factor, the GCF, of that first row? I can divide by a 5 and an x. Right, good. So I can divide by a 5x. That's that first row, right? I can divide 5x squared by 5x and -10x by 5x. And 5x times what would give me 5x squared? Just a 1x. You could even just put x. 5x times what would give me -10x? Careful. It would be -2. Good. X times what would give me 3x? 3. Remember that at the very beginning I divided by -3 to everything. You don't want to forget that. Okay? So -3 is going to be a part of my answer. Then I'll put the 5x plus 3 in parentheses. And then I'll put the x minus 2 in the other parenthesis. This is the final answer to the second problem. So those two problems, those two are what we were trying to do for this. This is objective 21.2a.